All right, there you go. And we're being recorded. So now, careful what you say. We're not backstage anymore. So I think folks are probably joining at this point. So just for anybody who's joining right now, we'll wait another couple minutes just to make sure everybody can get on and get in. It's Zoom, so if you don't know how to use Zoom yet, I don't know. It's been quite a year. You should know by now, but hopefully we'll get on quickly. For those who are jumping in, I'll just kind of go through a couple quick things before we start the panel. Number one, after this, immediately after this panel, at 6 p.m. France time and 1 p.m. in the East in New York, for those who are around, we're going to be having a clubhouse session. Actually, it's 6 p.m. Eastern. So 6 p.m. Eastern New York time. So it'll be a little late for those in Europe, but if you can make it, we're having a really great clubhouse session to recap the day, all the events, all the sort of news that came out of the conference. So please check that out. It'll be hosted by a few folks from Smart, including Andrew Casson, who's one of our demand partners here in the US. I also wanted to just throw out there that if you have any Q&A while we do this panel, please ask the question. I love asking questions immediately and not waiting for the end, because it's just usually part of the conversation as opposed to it being sort of odd and strange at the end. So feel free to throw a question in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring it as we go through. Lastly, if you're in the chat at all, something that'd be fun is that if you're here and you're watching, chat away, tell me where you're from. It'd be nice to see where you guys are, everybody's here from, whether it's Europe or the US or LATAM or wherever around the world. I'd love to know where everybody is. But we can jumpstart this. So just let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Michael Sadicario. I work over at Smart, as it says right here on my Zoom, and I run demand side for North America for us. And so I'm here with this wonderful dais and that I'd love to introduce. But I know this is our last session of the day. So if you're in Europe, we'll try to keep this as lively as possible. I know we're keeping you from maybe your first glass of wine, but nobody's watching, so crack it open. It's okay. Anyway, today's panel is very exciting, a really important topic for the US market, and one that we hope resonates with operators, platforms, brand marketers, agencies, etc., all around the world. If you haven't had any exposure to the US Hispanic market in any of those roles or any of those companies, this should be a good first step towards an education. But if this is your everyday, we hope this adds to the fruitful debate within your organization. That said, and without any further ado from me, let me introduce our virtual dais. I'm going to actually ask each panelist to introduce themselves, name, title, organization. I told them I'd throw around something funny, so this one is next vacation destination that you have planned. We've all been stuck at home. So name, title, organization, and the next vacation destination you have. I'm gonna start with Andres, because it's only fair because he just came back from Hawaii. So like talking about vacation, let's go. You can give us a start.
Man, I would go right back. It was it was so nice. The weather was amazing. But I think the next place I'm going is Palm Springs, which I'm in LA, so it's right down the street. It's an easy like quick getaway. I'm Andres Palencia, co-executive director at LATV. We're a national bilingual TV network and media company that targets Latinos.
Okay, great, thank you. Vanessa, maybe you can go next.
Hi, thank you. And I am all for everyone who wants to crack that bottle of wine. I am a wine person myself. I'm Vanessa Vining. I am the Senior Director of Cross-Cultural Strategy and Head of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Hearts and Science. I am headed to Aruba the 3rd of July. I am fully vaccinated and ready to roll. So look forward to this great conversation.
Love it. All right. Allison, what are you?
Hi there, I'm Allison Tesnar. I'm the digital investment lead at PhD for the Diageo accounts or brands. You guys are all going somewhere fun. My next actual destination is a baseball tournament in the Wisconsin Dells for my son, but hopefully I get to go somewhere a little bit more exciting and relaxing soon.
I love it. That's my weekends, baseball. Yep. Um, Elvin, over to you.
Yeah, I am Elvin Fernandez, the VP of Ad Operations and Technology at Canela Media, which also includes Canela TV. I guess my next destination is Cancun, which was booked months ago, but once things open up in Europe, planning a trip over to Spain.
All right, love it. Well, that was fun. Thank you guys for playing along with that. So here's our actual first question. And I keep saying it's a loaded one, and I think it is. In your point of view, do you think the US Hispanic community is valued appropriately, undervalued, or overvalued by media and marketers? Allison, I want to start with you. So in your experience on the agency side, what do you think? Appropriately undervalued or overvalued?
Honestly, I think they're undervalued. I mean, and I'm going to quote a stat here that I wrote down. 62% of the US population through 2025 is going to be Hispanic. And that will make them the single largest and highest spending minority group in the United States. So it's super important to focus on them starting now. Why wait until then? You're going to be behind the 8 ball if you're waiting. So right, I would say undervalued for sure.
Great, thank you. Vanessa, how about you? What has this last year shown us the value of brands and agencies placing on the US Hispanic community?
I agree with Allison, definitely undervalued. And I agree in this really important moment in time, we need to be focused on the Hispanic consumer marketplace, as well as the overall consumer marketplace from a multicultural standpoint. And I agree, you're just thinking about that stat, and 19% of this country is already, Hispanic, and that's going to continue to grow. I think it's important to think about how you connect with them on an emotional basis. And part of that is really understanding their journey, understanding where they're coming from. The multicultural diaspora is vast. And so, some people identify as Latino, some identify as Hispanic, and where you come from and your experiences all make that is a big part of that. And then another really important thing to point out is when you think about Afro-Latinas, that is a very diverse group within the Hispanic diaspora, Latino diaspora. And so I think it's really important for brands, and a lot of our clients at Hearts and Science are really starting to take a much closer look at how they develop that long-term generational value and wealth with these consumers. And so I agree, this is a moment where you definitely don't want to be behind the 8 ball.
I'm just going to follow up with you real quick, Vanessa, if you don't mind. So we talked about this yesterday a little bit. Yes, undervalued, but we're all recognizing that, right? This last year, especially, we've been recognizing it, and we're hearing in news stories every day. There's something new, and somebody's focused on it now. I'm wondering from you, has it been more brands coming to the agency saying, "Hey, we need help," or is it more the agency going to the brand and saying, "Hey, you better be aware this market is growing, this market is huge already, like, let's do something here"? Which way is it going, or is it both ways?
I actually think it's both ways. We have clients who in this moment are recognizing the value of this, consumer segment, but we also internally at the agency understand those old models don't work anymore. Bolting on multicultural planning, bolting on focusing on the Hispanic market just doesn't work. And so it's a collaborative effort on both sides. We need to come to our clients with a really great business case proposition, not just saying it's the right thing to do, whether it is the right thing to do, but in addition to that, how does that impact their business? What's the growth opportunity for their business, their bottom line, if they start to really focus on building that generational relationship with the Hispanic audience and consumer base. I mean, Elvin and Andreas can speak to this, all day and all night. When we looked at just recently the upfronts, new fronts. I mean, Canela was there and talked about how they're advancing their platforms to reach, this burgeoning, Spanish language audience. We think about some of the other broader reach platforms are out there developing, targeted content on their platforms to reach these audiences. So I think it's, in a nutshell, it's both the client and the agencies all thinking about how we market to this consumer audience. And just to tell you something we're doing at OMG, we just launched our diverse content creators network. And it's specifically targeted towards minority and diverse publishers and content creators. And so this effort really is all about increasing opportunities for multicultural partners like a Canela and LATV, and finding new ways to, promote an equitable fairness, even the playing field in the marketplace as it relates to reaching Hispanic audiences.
Thank you. Yeah, great. And Andres, as a publisher, how are you seeing the market valued? And maybe it's a bit different than sitting on an agency side. So on the publisher side, how do you see it?
I mean, I think definitely you have the right folks here representing, because it's always if you're in a room and Vanessa's there kind of advocating on our behalf, that's, to me, is the biggest sign of progress. Is we actually have now kind of allies within the marketing community who have like a big picture approach, have eyes on the goals, and can help us see. But definitely, I think that there's so much work to do, and it starts first with just trying to understand, because we like to say that Hispanics are not a monolith, but we're also not such a mystery. It's almost just letting the community represent itself, whether it's within like minority-owned companies like LATV, Canela, or within even the bigger companies, letting those voices represent themselves and those voices be visible when it comes to as much telling their stories as it is being represented or being targeted. So I think there's a huge opportunity that's there if the more we're willing to kind of interact on a genuine level.
Andres, you said this yesterday to me, and I thought it was great, and I sort of quoted it to myself and wrote it here for me, that it's both undervalued and valued at the same time. And that perhaps so on the media side, as consumers value the media, certainly, and are like hungry for more media. But maybe the money hasn't necessarily followed. Is that the case? Like, is that maybe we're sort of like just unbalanced at this point?
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of both, because it's impossible today to look at general market culture just in the globally and not see this Latino influence in it. Alicia Keys, Snoop Dogg, everybody's singing a song in Spanish because you have to now. So the influence is there, but when it comes to the media that targets this community, the media that participates in this community, that provides opportunities for this community, I would say it's an underinvestment. So it's almost like you're operating in a different world. From the marketing community, sometimes the thresholds we're expected to meet don't match up what they've invested in. So it's like, and that's by definition inequity. So but I think those are the things that are being addressed, especially in conversations like this.
It's interesting because we always have, this is smart, and so we're a global company, and so this conference, this virtual conference has been global participants. I'm sure there's some people from around the world watching right now. That influence that the Hispanic community has on just generally society is so interesting. Sort of outsized influence that may not be recognized from every country around the world, and who might be spending in the U.S. for media. I'm wondering, Elvin, for you, you're seeing it in the weeds more than anybody, right? Media spend coming from various brands. Are you seeing it as, back to the original question, undervalued, appropriately valued, or maybe perhaps overvalued? Probably not, but I'll let you answer instead of me giving you my answer.
Was muted there. It's definitely undervalued in terms of media spend and in terms of dollars that are going to the Hispanic market. And if you look at the overall spend that is geared towards all the other markets, general market, and then the media spend that it's being geared towards a Hispanic community or Hispanic audience is very small in comparison. But at the same time, as Andres was saying, that and as you mentioned, the Hispanic community is both not overvalued, but they're valued and undervalued at the same time. I think they're valued in terms of entertainment, in terms of the cultural identity that's happening in this country, and the influences that the Latino community has on just the American culture, I believe is valued in that aspect. But when it comes to the media spend from the marketers and advertisers, it's definitely undervalued. They're not taking advantage of that opportunity and what's going on in the country. And just, yeah, just in general, what's going on in the way the Latino community is influencing every single piece of almost everyone's lives, from food, music, movies. It's definitely valued there, and you see it every single day. But when it comes to the marketing dollars, it's just not there. It pales in comparison to what they can be doing.
From our amazing view at this in this smart jet, 30,000 foot, let's look at some of the stats. You know, we're talking about it being undervalued. Well, okay, let's prove the point. I asked you guys all to do a little homework and maybe share some stats with us. Maybe Allison, I know you were excited to share some with us. Maybe I'll call on you first if you don't mind. Can you give us some stats on the U.S. Hispanic market? You know, media consumption, spend, buying power, that sort of thing. Anything in that area?
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the stats that I had found, you know, I quoted it earlier, and that it's so important. But you know, household spending. Hang on, I'm gonna move it over here so I'm not looking off to the side. You know, the household spending projected, you know, to reach almost $1 trillion. That's incredible. You know, sorry. And the I think what's most, sorry, I think what I have found, and I found stats to like back it up, was that Hispanics are really connected in with the brands. They're 41% more likely to connect with brands through social media. So that tells us where we should be spending some dollars targeted towards the Hispanic market. They also, you know, are streaming. You know, they're on their phones a lot more. You know, 34% more likely than average to watch TV on their mobile phone. I know that's not how I typically consume, you know, my media. So that's definitely different. And I think we need to recognize that and make sure that the way that, you know, we're trying to reach them is in the places where they're consuming that media. And so those are the types of things that we're looking at least here at PhD on the clients that I work on, to make sure that, you know, if we're going to be talking to the Hispanic market, talking to the Latino market, you know, et cetera, and doing so authentically, we need to do so where they are and not trying to reach them where we think they are.
That's great. Thank you. And Vanessa, I know you had some OMG research. Maybe you can share a couple things with us.
Yeah, Allison was spot on in terms of like the population, the growth trajectory, the buying power at 1.5 trillion among this audience. But when you start to just, again, think about the makeup of this audience, you know, 60% of the Hispanic Americans are under 35 years of age. That's huge to know. Brands need to understand how to engage with this audience. When, you know, you think about the household makeup of a Hispanic household, it can be generational, your abuela, your grandmother, your parents, you know, so it's 2-3 generations living in the same home. And so, you know, one of the things we have to be really, really careful of is that generational, you know, population in the household, and assuming that, you know, because this Hispanic audience is younger, you can talk to them in English and it'll be fine. Some of the research that I found is that 46% of Hispanic population classified as being more acculturated, but also in that 55% of young Hispanic adults that are second generation or immigrated as children consider themselves to be ambicultural. So the 200%ers, they're 100% Hispanic and 100% American. And so they don't want someone to tell them how you should speak to them. They want to choose how they prefer to engage with your brand. So it's really critically important to make sure that you have bespoke creative that is in language, as well as you know, creative that is casted appropriately, so that Hispanics can see themselves through the lens of your brand. And so that's just something else I think is really important for people to understand. It's not one size fits all. You really have to be very nuanced in how you build that emotional connection with the Hispanic consumer.
Andres, Elvin, I didn't want to leave you guys out. If you had anything you wanted to share, I can go to the next question, but I know those were some amazing stats. I think proved the point, but I'll give it to you guys for a second if you'd like.
I mean, definitely just what stands out to me is the global scale of this particular audience. I saw one article that was comparing it to, it would be the third highest growth rate globally as an economy. The Hispanic, the U.S. Hispanic consumer. So that just shows you the not just the scale of it, but also like Vanessa was saying, the influence, because you have, you know, we buy what our parents recommend, and then we recommend to our friends who are more likely to take a recommendation from a Latino. The social media perspective as well. We are the most, I forget the exact statistic, but it's racially, when we share something, it gets shared most to white, Black, Asian, versus other communities where it's shared most within. So it's both really influential as it is on a really massive scale.
Can I add an additional point to what Andreas just said? It's really important when you think about some brands that lead with cultural insights and have been winning in their category for years. Take McDonald's, for instance. I used to work on McDonald's. Everything they've done for years has been led with multicultural insights. And so understanding the impact, to Andreas's point, and the influence that people of color, Hispanic, African American, Asian have within their communities and outside of their communities is really huge. So a lot of brands really need to step back and think about, how does their product resonate? What's the benefit to these communities, and how can they, again, look at building those partnerships with partners like, LATV and Canela to help bring that brand to life in the eyes of this consumer.
So I'll just move on to the next question, if you don't mind. And Elvin, I'll start with you because you didn't get a chance to answer the last one. Look, I've been using almost exclusively this entire panel, and prior to this even, U.S. Hispanic as the terminology to speak to the market. But there's obviously a lot of debate on terminology. We've heard a lot here already. Multicultural, Latino, Hispanic, Latinx. Vanessa, you said Afro-Latina. Like, it's very interesting how people, sort of slice and dice and call different groups different names. I'm wondering from your perspective, Elvin, and I'll put it to everybody else as well after, what do you think about this? What should we be using? What would you advise anybody on the sort of watching this right now, what they should be using?
Don't use Latinx. I think that's in my opinion, I think that's a kind of like a marketer's term that was created. I don't think that represents us as a community in general. Using Latino or Hispanic, that those are perfectly fine. Those are perfectly fine terms to use. I myself use those interchangeably. I prefer to be called Latino, but being called Hispanic is completely fine. But Latinx, it just seems like something that we just created just to be PC, or something that was like a marketer created. The origins of it, it's kind of, you kind of look it up, and there isn't really a some folks don't really know where actually originated from. But using that term, it just doesn't it doesn't connect with us. I mean, no one associates themselves as Latinx, but using using Hispanic or Latino are perfectly good terms.
Elvin, you said something yesterday that was interesting. It was like business. There's a business term, and then there's the personal terms that you use. I think that's really interesting as well. Andres, what do you think about that? Business, personal. What are your thoughts on the topic?
I think in general, kind of our approach here is we use all of them kind of interchangeably, and it depends on kind of knowing who the audience is. And for me, the best rule is, if someone is identifying themselves and using a term, believe them and use it. Because to correct someone on how they want to be spoken to, or when it comes to this, your identity is a little, it's not something you want to get into. I will say for a lot of our LGBTQ plus community, especially here, that's where we have heard a lot of Latinx, for the obvious reasons of, some people have a, don't want to be gendered, want to be gendered, find that term to be, inclusive in a way that maybe other terms didn't necessarily resonate. So I think if you just let the people identifying themselves kind of lead, but I feel in marketing spaces, like you hear a lot of Hispanic more than Latino or Latina, and you hear both. I love that we're hearing a lot of this. I love seeing and hearing a lot of Afro-Latina, Latinx, even there's Latine. So anything, for me, anything that's an attempt to be inclusive and to make people feel welcome is always something exciting.
And Vanessa, Allison, I'll put this to you both. How do you speak about it with brands? I mean, not every brand has somebody who's an expert in this space, and so you're having to educate them on how to approach it. How do you consider this, and how do you speak towards it with the brands that you work with?
Sorry, Vanessa, I don't know if you wanted to jump in, but the way that I look at it is Hispanic, refers mostly to people that speak Spanish. So, when we're doing something that's, in Spanish, or we're literally trying to reach people that speak Spanish, that's when we use that term. And then if we're looking to target like that broader audience across the Americas that, is Hispanic, does speak Spanish, but also could be from somewhere like Brazil, because dear God, if you value your life, please do not call anyone from Brazil Hispanic. That's when we start to use like Latino and Latina. I know that Latinx, like I listen, I've heard that it's sort of a marketing term that the Hispanic and the Latino audience like don't really love. So we try not to use that. I don't know if there's any direct conversations, but I think we lead by example and then they follow suit. Should there be more conversations? Probably. But we just try to make sure that we're using the terminology that fits the purpose. And then they typically follow.
I agree. I think you have to be careful trying to tell people how to identify and what resonates for them. You can set yourself up for a huge failure if you do that. I think it's important to really, again, just step back, understand the culture. Again, it's a vast diaspora. We talked about it. Some identify Latinos, some identify Hispanic, some identify as Latinx, which I do agree was a marketing term that was developed to just kind of envelop everyone. If you just think about African American is more than just people who were born in the United States. It's a huge diaspora. So I say all that to say that it's really incumbent upon the strategists on the agency side and the client and the comms team to really step back and understand who this audience is, the cultural nuances, where they come from, again, is a huge influencer of how you even market to this audience. Looking at, are you the number one brand, in a specific DMA or state? All understanding all of those factors are really important to understanding how you message to and communicate with this audience in a truly authentic way. Because right now in this current inflection globally, it's not even just in the United States, you want to make sure that you're being very sensitive to how you communicate and market to this audience, and do it in an authentic way, because consumers will call you out now if you don't come correct, they say. So you have to really think about that in a very sensitive way.
I love that there were varying opinions on this topic, because I think that's why it's a topic. It's such a funny one that it becomes a topic, but it still remains. And it's a good transition into the next sort of set of questions I have, which are more about Adtech. As this is sort of more of an Adtech conference here, I want to focus on this now. So we said that the US Hispanic market is not a monolith, right? It's not one thing. It may be defined by certain terms, right? But like certain words, but doesn't mean that everything is the same. There's clear differences by generation, acculturation, region of the US, as Vanessa, you were just saying. what are some of those differences and nuances, and how do we address them as publishers and as marketers? Allison and Vanessa, I wanted to go back to you guys both first, because you both mentioned in our individual conversations prior to this about building playbooks, and using them to help guide you. And so I was wondering if you could maybe go into that. Maybe Vanessa, we can go right back to you first, about how to build the right playbook, how to sort of research, the varying differences of the sort of audiences that you're trying to reach and consumers ultimately that you're trying to drive towards, actions, buying, engaging, what have you.
Yeah, again, I think it really starts with understanding your consumer and how your brand intersects with that particular consumer. And then looking at what's the opportunity, what's the competitive landscape look like from a global US perspective, or even down to the DMA or state level, what's your BDI and CDI against this particular audience, right? And then you want to definitely, so for us, what we do when we build a playbook, and we recently did one for a client, was to do exactly that, looking at the broader audience and then drilling it down from a macro to micro standpoint, and really what are the key drivers that influence their business. And so once you start to do that, you really start to unearth new audiences, new untapped audiences. You obviously want to maintain your current audience, but you also, in our instance, we found some new untapped audiences. And then we also look at how broad media is consumed among, the Hispanic audience, as well as the really important connection that Hispanic consumers have to endemic environments and content in those endemic environments. And they're uniquely different. So you need to understand where's the value prop from the broad reach, which we know, as Allison and I can both attest to, is really important, because we know Hispanic audiences are consuming general media, but that emotional connection, the value that they have to those really important endemic spaces and voices is equally important. It goes back to what I said about not choosing how a consumer should engage with your brand. You allow them to select how they choose to engage with your brand. And so out of that, then we look at, Allison kind of comes into the mix if you're thinking about the traditional process in terms of this is the opportunity, this is the audience now, here's how much we have to invest. And then Allison will go off and find the right spaces, to invest those dollars in, to make sure that we're reaching that target in a very authentic and well-rounded way.
So Allison, I'm going to merge this with a question we got from our Q&A from an anonymous attendee. Thank you for the question, which is about what channels, CTV, audio, et cetera, do you think is the most engaging, reachable for the Hispanic audiences in the next 5 years? So combine that in terms of what sort of channels, what mediums become the most impactful for the Hispanic community, and how do you look at buying media right now, and reaching? We obviously when we think about targeting Hispanics, it's like, okay, creatively, let's get on the same page. Let's make sure we're in Spanish language and things of that nature. But really, how do you look at buying media? What platforms are you looking at? And how are you buying that media? Does that change with the Hispanic community?
That's a great question. I'm going to start by saying, like, Vanessa's right on. We work together across the agencies on similar types of playbooks. And, I think it's interesting because, like, Vanessa's like, building that playbook, but my team is the one that leverages the playbook. So, like, we view it differently, and I guess the same and differently, or use it in different ways. So, like, for us, that playbook, because we can't have meetings with every single partner out there, we really lean on it and rely on it to provide details about each of the partners. And what we find extremely helpful as part of that guide is overviews of the partners, like, so that we can match up the audiences and what the briefs are from the clients, and match up to the partners, and how we can be leveraging each of them, like, really thoughtfully, understanding the content and editorial alignments too, so that we can be more purposeful about just making sure we have those right moments highlighted as part of our plans. For us, that's what has been the most helpful. And then the question about, what channel, the answer is all of them. I think for Hispanic, in general, like, what our goal, is the investment group is not just to target Hispanics like that. Yeah, sure, we could do that, and we have like reach plays and distribution partners and things like that where we do that, but like to have more authentic connections with the audience, we have to reach them in specific ways. So certainly we have TV and CTV. We have to cross those generations. So the older generation is still watching linear TV, but that younger generation, they're watching on their phones. So we have to have that the cord cutters and things like that. But we also know that culturally, music is a huge part of the Hispanic culture. So we want to make sure that we complement those linear and those TV type buys with surrounding playlists and surrounding audio and having them hear their own voices on the radio or within podcasts, DJ reads, things like that. Those are the types of things that we're really looking at right now. I hope that helped.
Yeah, certainly. It all helps. So thank you. Elvin, for Canela, you guys have so many different outlets. How are you looking, just to answer that anonymous question that I think is great? Like, what channels are you at Canela looking at investing more in and have been investing in that you think is going to be sort of fruitful for the next few years?
Well, CTV, definitely. We launched Canela TV in May of last year, and it was right around, in the thick of the pandemic. And it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was a blessing, but, kind of the time that we launched was kind of like the perfect storm where everyone was hungry for new content and new entertainment channels. And when we launched, there wasn't really anything like what we have and what we offer to the U.S. Hispanic demo. And the way we're marketing it, it's more for the second generation, third generation Latino that's in the U.S. that's looking to connect culturally and to their heritage. Especially like a second generation or third generation Latino, they might not have. They might not speak, Spanish all that much. Like myself, I'm second generation, but I was born here and I speak primarily in English. I understand Spanish, I can speak Spanish, but I primarily speak in English. And for having an app or a CTV channel or entertainment channel that's geared towards second generation, third generation Latinos, that there's a way for them to connect with their culture and discover entertainment from their, from other countries, from different cultures that are within the Hispanic community. And it's something that I think, like I said, like the way we're marketing it, it's something that it was, what's needed, and I think that's that's it. Now I have so many things in my head. I'm trying to get so many things out, but it's just that yeah, CTV. I think that is something that we're focusing greatly on, and I think CTV and the platform that we have with the entertainment, as Allison mentioned, like music is something that culturally, across all the different cultures, we all kind of bond there. I mean, we're launching Canela Music in a couple of months that that speaks directly towards that. So music, audio, CTV, all those channels are definitely something that we're going to be investing in. And I think the marketers and the advertisers and the agencies that are out there, I think those are the channels that they should be looking towards, because there's a lot of innovations. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are coming out. They're investing in these platforms because they see that's where the second generation and the third generation Hispanics are going, the cord cutters. And I think that's definitely where everybody should be focusing on.
With so many differences that we've spoken about and everybody's kind of touched on, that there's different, how many generations you are here versus, you know, if you are more bilingual or more just Spanish or more English or whatever. There's so many differences. I'm wondering, as we move deeper into the ad tech sort of conversation here, when we're talking about like programmatic and trying to get scale, but also trying to remain personalized and customized to the right person. How do you do that? Andres, solve it for us right now. No, I'm just wondering for you, like maybe you can touch on a couple things. You know, we obviously have cookie deprecation, which no one here wants to answer that question. So maybe you can touch on that. But like, how do we ensure that we're addressing the right audience at the right time? What are you working on right now? Or how do you view this? You know, hitting the right person with the right message at the right time, based on everything you could possibly know about them and their environment. How do you look at this?
I mean, at least our approach, it seems like you kind of have to follow where the audience, like where the audience wants you to go and where they want to take you, which for us means, for example, for us, it means we hire people who represent, who mirror the community that we're creating content for. So we try to create those opportunities to reflect that. And when it comes to, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic about the whole cookie deprecation. I think either it might launch a new understanding that's somehow browser-based. There'll be something will come along that might take a little bit of the people's insecurities about, you know, their data and privacy, but it might actually help us, you know, get us slightly more transparent, but less, you know, kind of avoiding those barriers of are you learning too much about me? Like, are you in my kitchen telling me what to buy? Or are you trying to understand my culture and access me in the way that I want to be accessed? Which I think that's the role that content plays. Like Elvin was saying, if you have some content to go to that can reflect who you are or how you're consuming, then that's what's going to be effective. So for example, if when you're thinking of how to serve ads, it's pretty much what's the environment that they're playing out in. Is the, you know, for brands like ours, we create, we don't just create for one outlet. We kind of tailor different series for different modes of consumption. So for example, you might see, we have a show called The Recap with Dramos from the Breakfast Club, and it premieres on Instagram TV. So because that audience wants it then and there, and then you might see the interview version of that on television, on linear, and then would be replicated on CTV and on our app. So if you're able to kind of keep up with how the different consumers, how the different audiences are watching the media, then that's where you'll see the ads be most effective. And that's where there'll be a home where they'll connect a little better, especially within the endemic spaces.
So
can I add an additional point to that, Mike?
please.
I appreciate your optimism, Andreas. I mean, I really do, because, you know, on the strategy side, we think about the fact that awareness was the only way we could measure until digital happened, you know, until we were able to start really looking at the ROI in terms of media spend. And so really, it's interesting. There was an article that just dropped internally at Hearts the other day about cookie deprecation and looking at this as an opportunity for us to really increase media quality and value and around our KPIs. And, you know, thinking about like how we pivot our measurement framework to account for this. And so while I agree, Andreas, it does open up an opportunity for us to look at how we can continue to track and measure performance in the digital space. I think it really pushes internally and externally with our partners to look at how we're building better streams of connecting with these audiences in mid and upper funnel so that they don't lose the value of lower funnel performance in terms of conversions, because the cookie deprecation is definitely going to impede us from being able to really understand that lower funnel movement. So it's even more, I say all that to say it's even more important now that we're connecting with brands on that like emotional level and make sure that that comes through. I agree, like P&G is a 4th generation brand. I use it, my mom uses it, my grandmother uses it, my children use it. So building that equity and, you know, with a generational value is going to be extremely important.
Elvin, I'm curious to ask you, so, because we had a great conversation about this yesterday about potentially overthinking things, like when it comes to all of the data and identity and cookies going away, and just like the whole sort of scary apocalypse nature of all this in the conversation. Like, are we overthinking it? And you're like up close and personal, seeing the data day to day. What's working? What's not working? What can we learn from some of your perspective?
Yeah, working in ad ops, where my team optimizes campaigns all day long, and of course we're pretty much 100% Hispanic. That's the media that we place for folks, and that's the platform that we're on, and the websites and CTV, of course, but. Yeah, like I was mentioning to you yesterday, sometimes marketers, agencies, creative people, they overthink too much how to reach a Hispanic or Latino. They're too focused on sometimes on having in language banner with in language content, and everything needs to match up nicely, or they're generally it's just that, just having matching up the creative with the content. It's not, it doesn't always have to be that way. We see from hundreds of campaigns that we run, English creative works perfectly fine on Spanish content, and vice versa. On Canela TV in general, we ask users when they register, do you want you want communication in English, or you want communication in Spanish? Most of our content is in Spanish, but most of our users, when they register, they want to be communicated in English. So just because our content is in Spanish and they're just watching Spanish content, doesn't mean that they're just 100% Spanish all the way through. So I think I was seeing the other day that's like 90% of our users are registered users, or like 80 to 90% of our registered users want to be communicated in English. Their device settings, the majority of the device settings for our users are set in English, but they're watching 90% of the content is in Spanish. We have English content. We have Spanish content with English subtitles. Everyone's watching in Spanish, but they want to be communicated in English. The ads that they're watching, it works perfectly fine in English. So sometimes I see when our team gets tags and creatives from agencies, it's like there's so many different creatives and so many different ads, because they're trying to line up the content with the creative, and that's just overthinking it. It's if you're reaching second generation, third generation, it depends also on the platform as well. If you're reaching a younger audience, the creative doesn't need to be in Spanish. It could be perfectly in English. You can tie the Hispanic kind of creative by throwing in a Spanish word here or there. I was seeing an ad from AT&T the other day where a customer walks in, and he is speaking in English to the representative, and their mom calls, and they start talking in Spanish on the phone. I think that's amazing. That's amazing. It's an English ad, but then there's parts of it that are in Spanish. I think those creative like that is amazing, and I think brands and advertisers should do more of that. But lining up content that's in Spanish with creative that's in Spanish is not really necessary. If you kind of blend the two, then you're really speaking to the Hispanic consumer.
That's great. Thank you. And I think that actually answers one of the questions we have from Melissa. Thank you for your question. I think that probably addresses that nicely. And we hit sort of the end of our session here. I did have one last question for everybody before we go. What is it? Andres goes to Palm Springs. Vanessa goes to Aruba. Allison's going to a Wisconsin baseball tournament. I'm sorry, Allison. I think that's maybe not the best one for everybody. It's okay. I hear you. And Elvin, Cancun. Before you guys go to all those wonderful places, I think just one more serious question that I wanted to get to is I think it's important when we do panels like these, we actually end on this note, which is, we all hope for and want to, capitalize on the promise of a more equitable ecosystem. I think that's what we're all working towards or have been working towards, especially in the last year, if not more than that. And I want to know from each of you what you feel anyone who's listening can do to help. How can we together as an industry not push for an unfair advantage? I don't think it's ever about unfair advantages. It's about equal, not more than. And so I'm just wondering for you today, since we started this panel saying we're right now sort of getting that unequal share of the market. What can we do as, I don't know, citizens of this industry, let's call us, what can we do to better address in our own jobs, in our own day-to-day, the sort of inequity that's happening right now? Andres, I'll call on you first for this one, if you don't mind.
Oh, I mean, for me, it just comes with working with the community and whatever that means, and kind of addressing, like seeing what the challenges are and being realistic about what those challenges are and what you can do to address them. So for publishers like us, it always becomes being able to be in a room, or when we're present with an agency or even like a brand direct, to be able to have a conversation of like, what value can you provide? Because to be asked that question is better than what threshold do you meet. That historically has never ever been invested in for you to get there. So if you just take that moment to actually see the strengths of it, that's where you'll find the real value. So instead of expecting other companies to kind of perform in the way that massive companies with all the advantages in the world could, you'll be able to find that true value and those KPIs that you want by kind of like listening and seeing where the strengths are and investing in that. And that's where the equitable investment is, versus just saying like, oh, we're going to shift all our budget this way, and then we're going to expect you to deliver this thing that we decided. It starts with listening, and I think it goes a really long way.
It's wonderful. Thank you. Allison, I'm going to go to you next.
Sure. I feel really grateful that we have people like Vanessa within our larger agency that help to advocate for diverse vendors and partners and things like that. But what I really encourage my team to do, even on their own, is just to continue to learn, continue to educate yourself. If you don't know what Latinx means and how it's different than Hispanic, a quick Google search will tell you that. And just make sure that you're, continuing to just be open, to correct your own self, but share what you learn with your team, with your clients, build those partnerships with diverse partners and vendors, and just find ways to include them in conversations, advocate for them, to be part of our consideration set, and to include them authentically into our plans. Our goal is to continue to invest with the Hispanic partners against the Hispanic audiences, and just really make sure that we're continuing to show the value and the importance of this audience.
Thank you. Elvin, over to you.
I think Andres and Allison kind of touched upon this, just working together, collaboration with content creators, content owners, publishers, influencers. I mean, we all have a pulse on what's going on in the community and in this country. And I think agencies, marketers, anyone that's trying to reach out to the community should just collaborate and be open to working together. If there's an idea for a new product, or just thinking about just the brand identity, or how to reach out to the community, reaching out to publishers like us. We have tons of ideas, to hundreds of ideas of how to integrate certain brands and bring with there's tons of content that we can bring from other countries and introduce it to the U.S. market together with the brands. There's a lot of there's a lot of content creators and content owners that are hungry to work with brands to get, of course, to get their content out on a larger scale, but we do have tons of ideas of how to integrate brands, and yeah, it's I think it's collaboration, just working together. If you have questions about certain creative, what will work, what will not work, we're open to answering those questions.
Great, thank you. And Vanessa, sorry to leave you for last, but I think best for last maybe. Please plug the OMG Diverse Content Creators Network. Go.
I was actually going to say this. Thank you for asking the question first and foremost, because it is important that we look at and partner with all of these diverse publishers and content creators. And that is exactly why the OMG's Diverse Content Creators Network was developed. It's to even the playing field, to give access to these really important brands for Hispanics or African Americans. And we're looking to build this out into a very extensive network. But I think internally, it absolutely starts with having advocates. I think across OMG and Omnicom in general, we have people like myself who are DE&I leads, and we always encourage people to bring new ideas to us, new partners to us, so that we can be an evangelist, if you will, internally, and start to really connect them with the appropriate team members to really advance those conversations and find ways to work with them. I agree with you 100%, Andreas. When you think about those publishers that have massive scale, some of these smaller minority-owned publishers don't have that. But again, as I said before, they have a really unique connection to the community. And so we need to figure out ways to partner with them, amend the KPIs so that it's established for them to succeed, and how those KPIs ladder up to the overall campaign KPIs and how they contribute to the success for our clients. And so just looking at it through that lens, I think is a great advantage for publishers. So I encourage, anyone who knows me knows, I say, bring anyone to me, shoot me an email. I'm always looking for new publishers that I can help evangelize and provide new opportunities to partner with our brands.
It's a wonderful way to end. So thank you all. Thank you, panelists. This was really great. Appreciate all the passion and energy and stats that got looked up and everything else. So thank you for the time and today, and hope everyone enjoyed that. And it'll be available to share out widely on the website soon. And that's it. Everyone have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye.